Hey guys, it's Alexander Williamson here with The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. Today we're going to be talking about how we can save money while building an aquascape and how we can save ourselves some headache, some frustration. I have 10 tips here. Pardon my numb mouth, I just got done at the dentist. But we're going to be looking at 10 pretty easy ways. We're going to try to go over it quickly to improve both the way you put your aquascape together, how cheaply you can do it, and then also saving yourself a lot of hassle by doing a little bit of planning and a little bit of preparation. So let's jump right into it and get this going. This is a great refresher if you're already an aquascaper, already have set up lots of aquariums, or maybe this is some little tips you haven't heard yet. And if you're brand new, then this is a ton of great information. So let's jump in. Alright, number one on the list is going to be plan your aquascape. So, first of all, I recommend looking at other aquascapes. Figuring out what works in your water, what doesn't, what fish you like, the size of fish you're going to want, the tanks you have available, the tanks you want, whether it's going to be rimless, high-tech, low-tech, all those sort of things you want to plan before you start aquascaping. For instance, I started on this tank over here, and it was a Hillstream tank. Well, now it's a nursery jungle tank that's just completely planted. Same with this one. It's a nursery tank. So we're going to try again, keeping it Iwagumi style. And so here we have the aquascape in question that I have just set up. And we're going to run through the things that I've learned from doing nearly 100 aquascapes now over the last decade or so, with really the last 4 or 5 years being most of my work in this field. But one thing I've learned right off the bat is once you know those basic principles and elements, sketch it out. So I sketch out. I figure out what materials I have and I sketch it out. I sketch it out from a bird's eye view here, my big stones that I know that I have. And it doesn't need to be exact. See, you know, I thought I was going to do a false bridge or a slanted arch here, but I didn't have a good stone for it. So the stone still went there, but a little differently than planned. So you can see that that's generally the case here. Like, things are a little different on this terrace here. I wanted to leave more room for planting once I saw how much physical room there would be left. So you plan that out. And also with Iwagumi, you can go and check out all my videos on golden ratio, the rule of thirds, and that sort of thing. But we're not going to get into that at all. Really what's more important in this video is that you figure out what materials you're going to need. I like to say with the substrate that's active, so ADA, Amazonia, or EcoComplete, or Fluval Stratum, whatever it may be, I like to use 8 to 10 kilograms, or about 20 pounds for a 20 gallon scape. This is a 17.5, so I planned somewhere between 8 and 10. I also am heavy on the rock, so I went a little bit on the shy side with the 8. But really, that's 5 kilos per gallon, something like that. And with the stone, I figured that I'd have 15 stones, that they'd probably be 4 or 5 pounds. So that didn't really matter. I didn't need to do the weight. But if you have a bench or a rack that has a specific weight limit, definitely calculate the weight of everything with water, and then add a good 50% just in case, and with sand and everything else. So I've kind of planned that out. I think with sand I like to use usually 25 to 30 pounds for a 20 gallon, so 15 kilos, sorry about that, is what I ended up doing it in. But regardless, you'll figure it out. This was just for this scape. You'll figure out what you need to do. If you have questions, this is a very built-up aquascape here on the sides and back, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So the next, number 2 most important thing is going to be to get yourself your materials as cheaply as possible. I mean, if money's not an issue, great, like and subscribe. But if you're like me, what you're going to want to do is get a hold of all your supplies. I pre-rinse them, which is number 3, is definitely pre-rinse and lay out all your materials. And I always do this the day before, so I don't have to be lifting or moving or doing anything the day of. And so, you know, I use pool filter sand. This stuff, for 60 pounds of it, or, you know, about 30 kilos of it or so, 25 kilos of it, it was $12. And I actually got gifted that sand. These substrates are closer to the $50 range for 8 kilos or 15 pounds or so. And that's this Amazonia. Now, I washed it until it almost ran clean, but it's always dirty. It's always going to be a little bit messy, and, you know, don't worry about it. But if you want to save money, buy this pool filter sand. HTH, you can find it in most spots in the U.S. Easy stuff to find. Also, I like to use rocks and pebbles that I've found locally, so we'll hop outside real quick and take a look at what I'm talking about there. Alright, so this is what I'm talking about, this sackcrete. You can mix it with concrete or for laying patio, whatever you want to do for laying down stuff. It's at the hardware store. It's $4.98 a bag, and it's just fine gravel. So wash that thoroughly. Also, you can find stones all over. A lot of time embankments and things like that, or construction sites, they'll use this as fill. A lot of times if you ask them, they don't really care because they're going to rip that road out and pave it. So if you see a new subdivision going in, they lay this down for the excavators and things. I also go find things up in the mountains and find it where it slides down onto the side of the highway up in areas where they've cut into the hillside. And no one's going to miss that. It's actually cleaning up stuff. And you can find some cool fossils and cool jadeite and different banding and minerals when you do that. So let's hop back inside and talk about getting going on the scape. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to say is put your scape where you want it. It seems like an obvious thing to say, but put it in the room where you're going to have it and decide if you've got chairs or you can sit at it, look at it nicely. Is it the right height? Do you need to put it up a level? Do you need to add something to it, lower it, whatever? And then also, you don't need the exact lighting that you're going to have over it, but definitely have it lit from the right angle with a directional lighting. So don't use a spotlight if you know you're going to have a bar light on it. You know, see how I've done this here? I've got two lights here. I've got kind of a little pendant light just for a little extra, but then this bar light that runs across that will be kind of a twin star setup mounted on the top. But that lets you see contrast in shadows and in color, and just kind of lets you envision how things are going to look when things are settled. And when you're setting up this tank, always remember too that most tanks you're going to want to slope the substrate up. It actually goes up 5 inches in the back here versus only 2 in the front. Well, here it's like 5 also, but it climbs up quite a bit, and that will give the illusion as the plants are put in and things of that angle and of that vanishing point, which again we're not going to get into, but it's all present here when we look down at a level view of the tank. So for number 5, this is one you may not expect, but it's one that I love, and that is the trick of using filter floss. So this is how I like to shunt things up, kind of. So you'll take filter floss, you'll compact it down, and any place where the substrate will fall through or sand will fall through, just pack it in there well. And you're gonna have little cracks, especially, you know, in places like this. Then once the water's in, stuff will slide a bit, and then you can dust off whatever needs to be dusted off, and you can plant over that. It's not a big deal. We're gonna hide all of our sins, just like you do with any art project. This doesn't need to look perfect when it's in the hardscape mode. We're talking about hardscape planning really here. So the other thing you can do is you can actually rip the bottom of a cigarette butt off, and you can rip that in half and stick it in between stones, and then use any sort of super glue, crazy glue, cyanoacrylate, and that will glue stones together. Now, it's not incredibly strong, but it's enough to kind of tack things together and hold them in place while you get kind of a keystone in place, or while you're shoving this filter floss or whatever it is that you want to use, anything that wouldn't be harmful. But filter floss is in our media, you know, in our filters, so it's a no-brainer that it's safe and easy to do. Now, the next thing I always recommend is when you're looking at your little planning paper of how you are going to pull off your aquascape, I really suggest that people plan where they're going to hide little features. So, for me, I've hidden a bunch of lava rock back here and tubes. the tubes actually come out back over on this side, and they make a little cave. So not only did I take up space with those tubes, you can use PVC. I like to rough it up a little bit with sandpaper so that plecos and things will use it. But I mean, you could easily put a coconut cave, say, under this area here. Anywhere that's going to be fill or terraced, like layered up with substrate, you're going to want to fill it because substrate is so expensive. Even sand, I mean, it gets heavy and dense, and then you get a lot of anoxic area. Depending on what kind of system you're setting up, you may not want an anaerobic layer. I do, because I'm going to be using a little bit of anoxic filtration just naturally in this deep substrate tank. But in a lot of cases, you have a canister filter, and that's just not in the picture. It doesn't matter. So the other thing that I'm going to tell you that you should plan and hide all throughout your scape is going to be root tabs. So if you know that plants are going here, you know you're going to maybe do a big sword plant back here, or you know there's going to be crypts here, plan accordingly. Put the root tabs or the enrichment power sand or whatever it is you can afford to use. Put those things in. The other thing you can do is you can get safety sorb, which is like kitty litter, clay that you put down on any sort of industrial spill, and you can put that in a bucket and use Easy Green or Flourish, you know, whatever, Seachem Flourish or any sort of fertilizer products, and it will soak that up like crazy. You can put, you know, a quarter of a bottle of the stuff into a bucket and soak it in there in that safety sorb for a few days, and then hide that in the substrate, and it will act like root tabs. It will also buffer your water and pull some of the TDS down a little bit, things like that. So that's another one that I always like. Another one that you can do is you can hide filter outlets and you know, inflow tubes and all sorts of things like that, pre-filters. You know, you could hide it behind this rock. You could have the pipe coming there. I'm going to do something a little different here, so I'm not worried about it. But same with your lighting cords, your power cords, your heater, all that kind of stuff. Plan on where you're going to have it. If it's not going to be an inline system or with a sump, you know, this is low budget, so in that case, you know, I'm not building all that down below. So number 7, oh, last thing I was going to say. The other thing you can do is you can hide little glass dishes, like little shrimp feeding stations and things like that. You might want to do that maybe back here behind a rock or up here, but it just prevents mess. It's just another little nice little creature comfort that you can put in there. Any of that stuff that you can think of, using wood as a terracing structure so you get those tannins, or so your shrimp can crawl in the cholla or whatever it may be. All that stuff is a great thing to hide and to work into your actual structural scape. But for number 7, I'm going to say filter media pockets and or lava rock. And we kind of looked at that, but basically what that is you see some sand that's filling in on the sides, but there's a bunch of washed lava rock, which was $4.99 for, I don't know, 10, 20 kilo bags, so whatever, 50 pounds, 40 pounds of lava rock. Now, lava rock is very porous, and I've oftentimes put power heads or little pumps down in the high points in the scape, then surrounded it with lava rock, and then had spots where it comes out, like the side here, where I've used this fabric or some sort of little stopgap, and that allows your actual your tank to be its own filtration somewhat, outside of just the filter on the back. And I have definitely run it so that is the filtration. In fact, this whole tank has a rafter of sandbag size filter media bags of volcanic rock, red lava rock, with PVC tubes with holes drilled all through it that runs the length of it, and a power head that runs down into it and pushes water through that, and it will become a biological filter. So you can hide some really essential cool things in here. It doesn't need to just be high-tech. You don't need to spend the full money on the canister filter and the CO2 and all that stuff. You can get a lot more bang for your buck by placing root tabs, by putting in filtration, by having lots of plants to eat up your ammonia and prevent algae, by spacing your lights right. All these kind of things you can save yourself a lot of headache with a little planning. And like I said, when you put all your materials out the day ahead of time, it just puts you in a new mindset where you're in a creative mindset, and you've washed your rocks, you've you know, sorted all your different substrates, and you're good to go. So the number 7, where you have a filter thing, the other thing you can do is, if I hadn't filled this area, if it were just a stack of rocks in a wall, I could use felt, or I could use a filter media bag, and I could just section this off in here and then fill it. And then at the top, you just leave it a little low and then just, you know, kind of disguise it. But that uses a lot of substrate, so I don't always recommend filling the whole thing. That's why I like the lava rock approach. So number 8 is very similar with terracing and things like that, but what I do is I save my blister packs. So anything that comes in a package like this, I will cut this hard plastic. And I don't know if it has any bad effects on the fish, but it hasn't in the year or two that I usually keep a scape up at most. But if you're doing things like I'm doing here with this rock, the way this slope goes up, over time it will work its way down. Especially if we do a water change and it's a forceful water change, it won't be pretty. Same with separating the sand from the substrate. So it's great to cut yourself little pieces of this, little strips, and it's fairly bendable if you wedge it between rocks. And that can make yourself a little edge here, you know, a little edge here. So that's what I've got below the stone there. Back up in here, we've got 2 pieces. You can probably see where it makes a little W shape there. That's another piece there. But also it will prevent these hillsides from sliding down too much. But you're going to need to terrace it, or it will slide at some point. Number 9 is going to be, have your tools ready, and they don't need to be expensive. Yes, these little tweezers are great, and yes, the little scraper dealy-mabobs here, that if we look, are always lovely. These things are always great. But you don't need them. You can use a little spatula that you can get at the dollar store. You can use, you know, a silicone spatula or something like that. You can use a dowel. You can use a paint stirrer. I've used it all. I use my hands mostly. But this is to get into the little fine areas, and it does help to have, I say, at least tweezers, a spatula, or a flattening thing. And then I also recommend having a colander. Definitely having one of these for when we fill it up. And then I recommend having a variety of little containers. This is the top of a lava lamp cap, but it lets me fill in and get my hand in there in various spots that are tight. Now you can do the same thing with squeeze bottles and water, and that will allow you to kind of rinse off hardscape as it's getting dirty, and as you want to kind of see what you're working with. You know, you can see that it gets dirty. You might want to rinse it off and then step back and see what you've got. So I would say that I definitely recommend a squeeze bottle of some sort with water. I would definitely recommend a turkey baster, another 99-cent store find, and I would recommend the tweezers and some sort of spatula. All that leads to my last recommendation at number 10, which is the colander or bowl. This just basically, we're going to allow us to set this in here, fill it with water. It diffuses how the water comes rushing out, and it won't destroy your dry scape. Now you can also decide to do a dry start and start planting plants in here. You know, get a bowl of water and put a little one of those self-set heaters, one of these guys. That's 78 degrees, just keep it filled with water, put saran wrap over the top, and you can do the dry start method, which you can look up and figure out on your own. But these are my tips to save you money, time, frustration, and hopefully give you a little more room to be creative. So I hope they help. I hope that you have fun aquascaping, and let me know what you think I should be planting here. I'm thinking low-level crypts and something almost carpeting, Monte Carlo or Glossostigma, maybe a couple Eriocalans and a couple Spiralis red tigers, a couple pink flamingos, and then maybe some Myaka or mini butterfly rotella on the very back, which I like to save with actual active substrate. And even under this sand I have active substrate, and up here, so that I can create a wall if I want to. But you can also paint the back of your tank. You can get adhesives that stick on and cling and things like that. But I like to use plants. So Hope that helps, guys. If you haven't already, I know 70% of you guys watching are not subscribed, but if you enjoyed this video, if you want more and want to know when the next thing comes out, just click that little bell and make sure you're still subscribed. If you were subscribed, some people have messaged me and said they are no longer subscribed due to the madness going on at Google. So I hope you guys have a great day. Take it easy, and you can see more behind-the-scenes stuff under the Members tab if you are a member. I've got some behind-the-scenes stuff, and I'll be releasing some more how-to and how I did this actual specific scape right here soon, and we'll be flooding it probably live. So I hope you guys take care. I'll talk to you later. Bye.